All right, so are you ready to dive into another book with me today?
Always ready for a good book. What do we have?
Okay, so today we are going to be looking at Dan Brown's Inferno. Have you read this one?
I have, yeah. This is the fourth book in the Robert Langdon series, right?
It is, and we're going to be trying to help our listeners decide if this is a book that they should spend their time on.
Yeah, because time is precious, and there's a lot of books out there.
Yeah, there are a ton of books out there. So we've
Yeah.
got some reviews here, a stack of them, some positive, some negative, and yeah, we're just going to see if it's worth your time to read this one.
So we need to figure out if is this really something new, or is it just kind of a retread of the same Dan Brown formula?
Exactly, and we're going to be looking at the writing style, the plot,
Yeah.
how it compares to some of his other books like the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons.
Yeah, I think those are the big ones that people think of when they think Dan Brown.
Yeah, yeah, they are. So let's just jump right in and start talking about it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the basic premise is this. Robert Langdon wakes up in a hospital in Florence
Oh, yeah.
with amnesia, a head wound,
The works.
the works, and there's an assassin on his tail.
Sounds familiar.
It does sound a little familiar, but there are some clues that are tied to Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, now that's interesting to me because that could just be a backdrop, right? But the way that, from what I remember, the way that Brown uses Inferno is it's really woven into the plot. Like it's not just a setting.
Oh, that's cool.
It becomes kind of a puzzle itself.
Okay.
And even the psychology of the villain is kind of tied into it. So it's interesting how he uses that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that jumped out at me from the reviews is that this book tackles a pretty heavy theme, which is overpopulation.
Yeah, that's not something you see every day in a thriller.
Yeah, it's not something you see every day anywhere.
No, it's a big issue, and it's kind of a controversial issue.
Right.
And it looks like he takes it head on in this book, which is
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, the villain is a scientist who believes that overpopulation is the biggest threat facing humanity. And he's come up with a pretty radical and kind of terrifying solution.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, overpopulation, it's a global problem, right? Like, what do you do about it?
Exactly.
So it kind of puts Langdon in a different position than he's been in before, I think.
It really does. And before we get too far into the ethical dilemmas of it all, let's talk about the writing, because that's something that kind of is important in any book. And we see some things pop up here in the reviews about the writing.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that I remember and that I saw in some of these reviews that Brown can get really bogged down in details. Like he loves to describe things.
And sometimes it's a little too much.
Yeah, and it can slow down the pace, especially when you're in like a heart-pounding chase scene and then suddenly you're getting a lecture on Renaissance art.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to imagine like running through the streets of Florence with, someone's chasing me, trying to kill me, and then all of a sudden I'm stopping to have to look at a painting for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, there's actually a scene that several reviewers pointed out where that happens.
Really?
It's the Botticelli's Map of Hell, and he goes into this whole description of it while they're trying to escape.
Oh my
So you can
goodness.
kind of see how that would be a little jarring for some readers.
Would be for me.
Yeah. And I mean, he does try to balance those info dumps with like, he's got those classic Dan Brown cliffhangers and the fast-paced action, but it's not always a seamless blend.
Okay, so it sounds like the writing style is something that could be a hit or miss depending on the reader, even though we do have this really thought-provoking theme that he's going for.
Yeah, I mean, you're either going to love the details or you're going to be like, come on, get to the point.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get to the action. So let's talk about the plot now. Is it predictable? Does it offer any surprises?
So that's where I think opinions are really divided. You've got some readers that are saying, oh, I saw the twists coming a mile away. It was way too predictable.
Okay.
And then you've got others that felt like Brown kept them guessing, especially with the ending. Which is interesting because the movie actually changes the ending.
Really?
Yeah.
So the book ending and the movie ending are different?
They're different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that might be something that, if you've seen the movie and you're thinking about reading the book, you might still be in for some surprises.
Okay, interesting. So the book might be a little bit more thought-provoking,
Yeah.
even if the plot isn't as tight as some readers might like.
Yeah. And the movie, I think they kind of went for more of a straight action kind of resolution, whereas the book, I think, delves into those ethical dilemmas a bit more.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk about the characters now, because characters can really make or break a thriller.
For sure.
What did the reviewers think about Robert Langdon and his new sidekick, Sienna Brooks?
So Langdon is Langdon.
Yeah.
He's the same brilliant symbologist that we've seen in the other books. He's solving puzzles. He's, got his little quirks.
Right.
But Sienna Brooks is a new character, and she was a bit more divisive.
Interesting. So what was it about her that people either liked or didn't like?
Well, some reviewers thought she was really interesting. She's smart, she's resourceful, she's got this mysterious past that's revealed as the story goes on.
Okay.
But then other reviewers felt like she was a little underdeveloped or maybe even a little too perfect, like she didn't quite feel real.
I see. So maybe a little bit of a Mary Sue character going on?
Possibly. Yeah, so, it seems like she was a bit of a wild card for people.
Okay, so we've got this interesting theme of overpopulation, this writing style that people either love or hate, a plot that some people found predictable, and a female leads that's either intriguing or a little flat, depending on who you ask.
It's a mixed bag, right?
It really is. It sounds like it could be a really rewarding read, but it also might not be for everyone.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Like, is this something that you should invest your time in?
Exactly. So we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to go through some more details from the reviews and really try to help you guys make that decision.
Sounds good to me. Let's dig a little deeper.
So it sounds like Inferno has some good things going for it, but also some things that might make people not want to read it.
Yeah, it really depends what you're looking for in a thriller. If you want something that's just pure escapism with like a really straightforward plot, a good guy, bad guy kind of thing,
Right.
this might not be the best choice.
But if you like to think a little bit more.
Yeah, if you want to engage with some bigger questions, like, some ethical dilemmas, and maybe you're okay with learning a little bit about art and history along the way,
Right.
then Inferno might be worth checking out.
Okay, so it sounds like it could be a really rewarding read, but maybe not for everybody.
Exactly. And to help you guys decide if it's for you, let's look at some of the things that the reviewers said, both good and bad.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's start with the positive stuff. What did the people who like the book have to say?
Well, a lot of them really liked how Brown brings together history and art and these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, he's kind of known for that.
He is, and in Inferno, it's really cool how he uses Dante's Inferno, like the actual poem, as
Yeah.
like a framework for the whole story. So the imagery, the symbolism, it's all tied into the clues and the villain's motivations.
So it's not just like a random setting. It's like really important to the plot.
Integral, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
not just Dante. He's got all this stuff about Renaissance art and secret societies and hidden passages.
Ooh, I like hidden passages.
Yeah, it's all very exciting. It's like you're right there with Langdon running through these historical places, solving puzzles, trying to stay one step ahead of the bad guys.
It does sound pretty cool. But what about the writing style? I mean, we talked about those info dumps. Are there other things that might turn readers off?
Yeah, so a few people mentioned that Brown uses these really short chapters that end in cliffhangers.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah. It definitely keeps you reading, but it can also feel a little bit manipulative.
Yeah, like a cheap trick.
Exactly. And some people said that he repeats information a lot, like he doesn't trust you to remember what he just told you.
I could see how that would be annoying.
Yeah. And then there's this thing that he does with Langdon's connections.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that before.
It's like wherever Langdon needs to go, he just happens to know someone there.
Right, like the most well-connected guy in the world.
Exactly. And it makes it easy to move the plot forward, but it doesn't always feel very believable.
So the writing style is definitely something that people are going to have different opinions about.
Definitely, some people love it, some people will hate it.
Okay, so let's talk about something that I thought was really interesting, which is this theme of overpopulation that Brown brings into the book.
Yeah, that's not something you see in a lot of thrillers.
Not at all. And the villain thinks that a pandemic is the only way to save humanity.
Which is a pretty intense idea.
It's a very intense idea, especially, after what we've all been through recently.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think.
It does. But do you think he does a good job of handling such a complicated issue?
That's a good question, and it seems like people had different opinions about it. Some readers thought that it was really thought-provoking and relevant,
Okay.
but others thought that it was kind of superficial, like he didn't really dig deep enough into the issues.
So he brings it up, but maybe doesn't fully explore it.
Yeah, and some people thought that the ending especially felt a little too neat and tidy considering how serious the topic is.
Interesting. So even the overpopulation theme is kind of a mixed bag.
It is. It adds something different to the book, but it might not satisfy everyone.
Okay, well, let's talk about the ending then, since some people have mentioned that.
Yeah, so some people thought it was predictable,
Well,
but others thought that it was different enough from the movie ending that it was still a surprise.
so maybe worth reading even if you've seen the movie.
Maybe. And what about the characters? Did any other characters stand out to you besides Sienna?
Well, we talked about Langdon, and he's pretty much the same as always.
Yeah, he's reliable.
He is. But what about Sienna? Is she a good character, or does she just feel like she's there to help Langdon?
That's the debate. Some people thought that she was really interesting, a strong woman with a mysterious past,
Okay.
but others thought that she wasn't developed enough as a character.
So another mixed bag.
Another one. Yeah, it seems like with Inferno, you're going to get a lot of different opinions.
It does sound like it. So to sum it up, Inferno has some good stuff, some bad stuff, and it's really going to depend on what you're looking for as a reader.
Exactly. It could be a fun read, but it might not be a masterpiece.
Right. So we've talked about the writing, the plot, the characters, the overpopulation theme, and the mixed reactions to the ending.
We've covered a lot.
We have.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to give our listeners some advice about whether or not they should read this book.
Yeah, let's try to make it clear for them.
Okay, so if you're a big Dan Brown fan, you'll probably like this book.
Yeah, you'll get what you expect. The history, the art, the conspiracy theories.
But if you want something that's really different and new and has amazing characters and a plot, that will blow your mind.
This might not be the one for you.
And if you don't like repetitive writing or predictable plot twists,
Or if you just don't like Dan Brown's style in general.
right, then you should probably skip this one.
But if you're interested in this idea of overpopulation and you like how Brown mixes facts and fiction,
And you don't mind a few little quirks in the writing,
then you might really enjoy Inferno.
so it's really up to you guys. We've given you the information, the analysis, and all the different opinions from the reviews.
Now you have to decide if it's something you want to read.
And hey, even if you decide not to read this one, you can always go back and read the Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons.
Or if you're feeling really ambitious, you could read Dante's Inferno.
That's a good idea. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Inferno.
We hope this has helped you decide if you want to read it.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a new book.
See you then.
So, okay, wrapping things up, it sounds like Inferno, it's kind of a gamble, you know?
Yeah, I would say that's a fair assessment. I mean, it has some strong points, but it also has some things that might not work for everyone.
Right. It all comes down to like what you like in a book and what you're looking for.
Exactly. So if you like Dan Brown's style, if you've read his other books and you enjoy them,
Yeah.
and you like the premise of this one, then I think you'll probably enjoy it. It's definitely a page turner. It'll keep you entertained, and it's got some interesting ideas in it.
But if you get annoyed by like writing that's kind of repetitive or plots that you can see coming a mile away or characters that aren't very well developed.
Yeah, then you might want to pass on this one.
Right. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but the whole overpopulation thing,
Yeah.
it's a really important issue. And it's interesting that Brown brings it up, but
It is, but I think some readers felt like he didn't really do it justice, you know?
yeah, like he didn't really dig deep enough into the ethics of it all.
Right. It's a complex issue, and it's not easy to explore in a thriller. So I can understand why some people might feel like he kind of skimmed the surface.
And one more thing I wanted to mention before we finish up is Sienna Brooks, the new character.
Yeah.
Some people felt like she was kind of a typical thriller character, you know?
Yeah. I mean, she's smart and resourceful, and she's got this whole mysterious past. But some readers felt like she was just there to help Langdon, you know?
Right. Like she wasn't a fully realized character on her own.
Exactly. So that's something to consider, too, if you're looking for books with strong female characters. She might not be the best example.
Okay, so I think we pretty much covered it. We've talked about the good, the bad, and the maybe not so good parts of Inferno.
Yeah, I've given you all the info we have.
So now it's really up to you guys to decide if you want to read it.
We hope we've made it a little easier for you to make that decision.
And even if you decide not to read Inferno, there are plenty of other great books out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You could check out some other Dan Brown books. Or maybe even read Dante's Inferno if you're feeling adventurous.
That's a classic.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Dan Brown's Inferno.
It's been fun talking about this one.
It has. And we'll be back next time with another deep dive into a new book.
We'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.